All right, so we are going to talk about Looker Studio today, like dipping our toes into Google Looker Studio, which used to be Data Studio, which I preferred that name, but I don't work for Google, so um, that's fine. We'll keep on going. So it's been a while, but I was on Facebook and somebody asked if somebody had this infographic for school libraries, and this one right here was the one somebody shared from a public library. And I've made them in the past, and I was like, I'll just kind of refresh my, skills at using some of these tools. So I actually created a new infographic I did it in Canva and Adobe Express. I did it in Genially in Google Slides. I had not used PowerPoint in like 5 years, like kind of the online version. I thought maybe it might have had some awesome improvements, but it really felt kind of the same. It was no fun. I'm a nerd, so I like Adobe Illustrator. It's a little bit too much overkill for most folks. But ChatGPT was pretty young at this point. I even asked ChatGPT what should go into one of these infographics, and it gave some pretty good ideas. So the training data definitely has some school library information inside of it. But then I was thinking, like, when I was in, first of all, sorry, my name is James Allen. I work at the Kentucky Department of Education. I'm our statewide school library support person. I was thinking when had my own library, these infographics are not hard. The hard part is the data and like keeping track of it and like getting all those numbers together to put into the infographic is what is a pain. Like the actual designing the infographic is not too bad. There's templates, there's things. So that part's pretty easy. So a friend of mine on my team, Ben Maynard, he's always doing this Looker Studio work on all these dashboards, and it has so many applications. And I thought maybe I could use that. So basically, what I did was I kind of took some of the ideas going into this infographic and then created a Looker Studio project. And that's what this is. This is kind of the back end. I'll show you what it looks like when you share. This is what it looks like when you share. It's probably cut off a little bit. Sorry. But it basically lets you visualize data. And really, the only data that I've shown in Looker Studio is Google Sheets. And I've done a little bit of Google Analytics, like where it keeps track of your website visits. But it has lots of integrations with other data tools. And it's really obviously not an education tool. It's more of a business and science visualization tool. But it's kind of cool. It's almost like a website builder too at the same time, slash presentations, because you can really have multiple pages, slides. So each of these numbers here is basically just adding up numbers that I insert into a Google form. So when I fill out the Google form, I say we check some books out. We added some books to the collection. These numbers automatically um, will add up on their own, and it's constantly updating. Every time I input that form, click submit, maybe like 5 minutes later, it's live on this dashboard, which in reality, like I've shared it with my principal, it might be embedded on my website. It might be in it might be on some digital signage in the library. That's always updating. So that part makes it super easy. And that Google form is always like in my pocket, in my phone, and I can just fill it out whenever I want to. My first one, I didn't have any it was mostly quantitative data, but I added this little cool library story. It's basically a short answer question on the Google form, and that's right there, and you can cycle through it. But inside of Looker Studio, I'm going to show you kind of what this all looks like, and then I'm going to go through the steps of creating this. I went to a bunch of Looker Studio sessions, and I kept seeing this in product like I'm showing you right now, but I never got to see the actual first steps of how to get there. And I think I'm going to give you some links at the end of this that'll, where all the directions are written out. And there's another video of me talking through the directions. I think just seeing it kind of in action will help you when you go to create your own. So on this second page here, after I did this first page, I did all of this inside of Looker Studio. Like I uploaded individual icons from Noun Project. I uploaded this photo of myself and this fake school logo. I made all these gray boxes that kind of fit together. Then I was thinking, I've already made this infographic inside of Canva. So I went to Canva and just deleted the numbers out and then exported a single image from Canva and inserted that image into Looker Studio. And then I put these numbers back in. These are called scorecards. These are charts. And then I didn't do it on all the numbers, but I used color matching to match the design. So an awesome part about this Looker Studio stuff, there's so many filters and charts. You can even do this by date. So since you're filling this out on a Google form, it's capturing the date every time you do that. So I can look at my stats based on a certain period of time. I want to compare January to February or last year to this year. I can do that just like you would. Kind of reminds me of when you look for flights on the internet. You click your starting date and your ending date. You can also embed, this is a published Google Slides. Like, you publish the Google Slides, it automatically rotates through the images. You can embed one of those inside of Looker Studio. You can do animated GIFs if you want to, get some photos and videos in that way. You can embed YouTube videos, and I'm sure I'm missing a few things, but those are the big ones. But that's basically it. I mean, once you have this created, you can share it just like you do a Google Doc, Google Slides. So that part's all very familiar. Obviously, Looker Studio is not in your little Google waffle, so you kind of actually have to go to the website lookerstudio.google.com the first time, and I just save a link to that. Another cool feature that is not really part of this infographic, but say it's another reason I want to share this. I think school librarians can use this and help other teachers out and their administration out too. There's so many different uses. Principals are dealing with data all the time, whether it's assessment data or special education or I don't know, transportation. There's all kinds of things that you can apply this to. So just to think about it in different ways. I was talking with somebody, like I've never actually been in a regular classroom. I've been a music teacher and I've been a school librarian, and that's it. But if in my brain, like if I had a third grade class, I would almost want one of these dashboards for every single student. Like I would have a customized Google form for every kid. And like the parent would have the link, it would be secure. Nobody else would have, access to that. As soon as I captured some anecdotal thing or some personal goal for that student, it would be in this dashboard automatically from the Google form. So those are just some ideas. I'll come back and talk about a few more of those. First, I'm going to give you a unrelated tip. Like, I don't know if this is a tip or if maybe there's a better way to do it. I have a Google Drive folder with a little trash can emoji. So I go there first when I want to create stuff that I know I'm just going to throw away later, and I don't want to just dump it into my regular Google Drive. And then sometimes I empty this out. So that is a bonus tip for you if it's a tip. If it's not a tip, then you don't have to do that. So I'm going to go to New. I'm going to do a Google form. Many of you probably have already done this before. Let's see. Give it a title. And most of my questions are going to be short answer, and I'm going to be collecting numbers. And none of them are going to be required, because if, say I'm filling this form out and I have a collaboration with a teacher, like I can just fill out that one question. I don't have to fill out the entire form for this to work. I can just fill out the one that's applicable at that moment. So let's do just some basic questions. And let me do this while I'm remembering. All the stuff I have on the infographic, that is just for illustrative purposes. Like the best way this is going to work for you is to come up with the things you want to calculate on your own. It could be, something really specific to your school and your program. Don't feel like you've got to use the questions that I have in here. How many students visited? Next tip to hopefully save you some time. When I first started this, I said, how many students visited this week or today or this month? That was not a good idea, because when I connect this to Looker Studio, it kept seeing my words that I use, like day and month, and it thought that those were date fields. How in a spreadsheet, numbers have different kind of attributes, like it can be a date or a currency or a number. We don't want multiple date fields. We just want the one single form submission date to be our date field. So I've started writing my questions without those time words in them, and I feel like it's gotten a little bit better at recognizing which one is the date field. So I'm just going to leave it just like that, and then I'm going to do a new one. Let's see. This is going to be goofy. How many Dogman books were chewed up? Let's duplicate this one. Let's do, oh yeah, I'll show you this one. Cool library story. This is our qualitative one. I'm going to talk about that template. Yeah. So sorry, I just glanced at the chat. I could share with you the Google Looker Studio template, and there are other templates out there. The problem with doing that is not like Canva where you just get the template, or Adobe Express where you can just kind of go in and do your own thing. As soon as you open my template, it's already broken because you don't have access to my data source. So you kind of have to start from scratch anyway. And I might share a template at some point, but right now I think it's really easier if you just start from scratch and kind of create your own. That way you can do your own design, and like I showed you at the beginning with Canva, and insert these cards on your own. So I think it'll make sense once I show you. So next we've got our questions, and then I would spend some time on this, like get the questions the way you want them. It could be drop down list, it could be however is easiest for you to insert things. We had a Google form in our high school where the kids were signing in, and they would choose which teacher they were coming from. So I could have connected that data. That would have been really easy to do because those questions were already being asked and answered by the students. Another thing you can do is just, if you're going to talk about like your collection a bunch, you might just export numbers from your catalog and enter those manually, or you might, just copy things from a spreadsheet into this. That's kind of up to you, but basically this use case that I'm showing you right now, this infographic, is basically on these questions that I'm answering from the Google form. So I'm going to look at the form. I'm going to answer these a few times. And some folks have asked me, how do you know how many students visit? I'm like, well, if you have the form like we had in the high school, we know because, they're signing in. If it's elementary, maybe middle, you can do your best guess. It might, if you're working with your English classes and, they're all coming, you can kind of estimate how many kids came into the library that week or that month or whatever, whichever time frame you're looking at. I'm going to say 25. Only one dog man chewed up on this moment. Cool library story. No, I won't. That's a little snarky. I won't say that. I'm gonna hit submit. I'm gonna do a few more of these. We had a bunch of kids this day, 200. 0 Dogman books. I'm not gonna do it. I'm just hit submit. Submit another response. 12. Bad day for Dogman, 5. Okay, so we've got some responses. So up here in Google Forms, you see the little number 3. I've submitted it 3 times. Some of you have probably done this, some of you may not have. If you go to these responses, you can click on link to sheets. And we need to do that for this Google Looker Studio thing to work. So we're going to click that. We can use the same name as the form. That's cool. You hit create. It creates it in the same Google Drive folder. And it opens up that Google Sheet. We actually, if we want, don't ever have to come back to this sheet ever again. Like, we just need this sheet to be there and be collecting these this data. So now I'm going to go to Looker Studio. Let's see. And keep track of these questions. I'm going to come back to some of these when I get finished. So We're going to go to blank report right here. And the first time you go to Looker Studio, there might be some questions like, are you sure you want to use this tool? It's by default, it's turned on in the admin console, but if for some reason your school or district has it turned off, it can be turned on. It's just not one of the, but by default, it is on. We're going to click on blank report. And this is what I was talking about, all those connectors. There's lots of them. So there's Google Sheets. That's the one we're going to use. I've heard of BigQuery. I've not really ever used it though, but lots of tools in here. We're going to click on Google Sheets because that's where our Google form information is going to. And then it's my most recent one there at the top because we just created it. I'm going to click that. And then, yes, we're going to use the first row as headers, and that's include the hidden stuff. That's fine. So hit add. I think it's going to ask us, are we sure? Yes, add to report. And that's basically it. You've created your project, your Looker Studio dashboard. By default, it puts this table here. I'm actually going to delete that. We don't need it. We're going to build a table in a second. I'm going to show you how that works. First, before we get started, if you're going to go the Canva route or Adobe Express or Google Slides and use another tool to create the graphic of your infographic, I would do that first and delete those numbers out. And then we would embed that image right here. Like you go to image and upload from computer and insert that one image. If you're just going to all do it from scratch in Looker Studio, it doesn't really matter too much. But the first thing we're going to do is add a chart. And we want a scorecard. Basically, 99% of the things you saw in that first infographic I showed you were scorecard. And it just tallies up those entries into the Google form. So I'm going to click scorecard. We're going to draw that. And right now it's just a record count. You know, we submitted that form 3 times, so that's not super helpful. We're going to go over here to the right, and you see data. Every time I click on this chart, you've got two little areas here, setup and style. Style is the way it looks, and setup is kind of more about where it's getting the data. So let's do how many students visited. You just literally drag and drop this onto the metric right there. And it jumped to some, so it's going to add those up. But you could also do different things like average or count and whatever works for that question. So it automatically has totaled that up to 237. The date range dimension, that's what I was talking about earlier, where you can filter this by date. It's using the timestamp from the Google form. That's what we want to see. It's a little icon of a calendar, and that's how it should look. If it doesn't look that way, we can work on that, but that's the way it should look in the beginning. So now I'm going to go to style. You notice if I make this bigger, it doesn't get bigger automatically. It just kind of stays there. I don't love how those words look right there, so I'm going to actually get rid of those. I'm going to go to style, and I'm going to click on hide metric name, which gets rid of that little label there. And for the size, I always feel like it should be at the bottom because, you know, it maxes out at 96 there, which is kind of big, but I want it to be as big as I drag the box. So I'm going to go to auto and click that. And now when I make this box bigger, that number gets bigger. And this is where you could change that color and match it to, you know, the design of your infographic. So we've got that. That's really big. I'll make it a little smaller. I'm going to make my own labels. So it's this little text box, just like in Google Slides. And it kind of works the same way with the style over here. I'll make it a little bigger. And it's kind of done. Like that's it. Those two things. This is the scorecard, and this is just a little text box with the label of that thing there. And you can drag or box around both of these, select them both, Control C, copy, Control V, paste. And now I've got another one. All right. Now I'm going to click the scorecard of the second one, and I'm going to drag in the Dogman metric right here. And you see that automatically updates. Obviously, our text box, Dogman disasters. Make that a little smaller. And then this last that cool library story, it's going to be a little different. We're going to do add a chart, but we're going to add a table, that first thing that was in here when it popped up. And yes, this is all free. There's actually fairly recently there's a pro version of Looker Studio, but I think it's like well beyond what any teacher or school would need. I've seen some pretty large projects in Looker Studio. There's like a limit on how many data sources you can merge, and I think the pro version adds on to that. But for this use case, for this infographic thing, for just a simple dashboard, yeah, the free version is totally enough, and you will probably not use, you'll only use like 5% of what Looker Studio can do. So I'm going to click add a chart, and I'm going to do insert a table. And I'm going to forget where to click because we're doing this live, but that's all right. It's already got cool library story. That's good. I don't need this metric here. So I think maybe I can move this down here and remove that. And no, I think I do need it in the dimension part. Yeah. Don't need the metric. We just need the dimension there. And then I'm going to say rows. I'm just going to do one single row. We're basically going to turn this table into a single cell table, one row and one column. So I'm going to click on one. And then let's see. I think now we go to style. I don't need the header. And I don't need row numbers. I can make this a little smaller. Actually, let's make this a little bigger. That's table labels. See if that works. I don't know if it will or not. Yeah, it does. So this is my cool library story. I'm going to leave these little things here. You can actually go in, if I find it, I think you can get rid of that little line if you want to. Ooh, that's kind of cool. I'll talk about that later. And then we would, select one of these text things here and copy it and just say, so that's basically it. You kind of just rinse and repeat that process over and over again until you have all the charts that you want. Let me talk a little bit about the way this looks before you go and share it. If you go to, I think, File and Theme and Layout, you can actually change the pixel dimensions of this project. So right now it's 4x3 landscape. We can make that more like most laptops are. Not a portrait, that's TikTok. Landscape. So a lot of times I'll switch it to landscape. If I know it's going to be something really specific, I want it to fit in a certain spot. Maybe if I'm going to embed it on the website, I might change these manually. Let's see. I say way too much. So that's the style. You can also go up here to page, and this is where you would do new page. Like I showed you in the beginning, I had those other elements on there. And you click that, and you can add more things there if you don't want to have too much maybe on one page for people to look at, but this, you could break things down even more on separate pages, or you can just have a single page that's really giant. I'm thinking of the next, yeah. So if we go to share, this is where you would get the link for folks. Right now it's restricted, but it's just like Google Docs. You could change it to just public, and then everyone who gets this link would see that. You can also, if you click this little tiny arrow next to share, you've got a few more options. You can embed the report, and I'll show you what that looks like. Go to my website, and so here I have some links to that. I'll show you that later. This is that same Looker Studio. It's just embedded on the website. I mean, you can interact with it still. This automatically updates. You can view it full screen if you want. You can go to I hate that it jumps back up on the page, but there's the second page of it. There's the animated GIFs. So that's what it looks like embedded on a website. This part is cool. So, I showed you the date range. That would actually be under add a control, and there's the date range. You can put that right there. And if we selected this range, obviously we only have 1 day of data because we just entered it this morning. But if you had your multiple days, you could apply that filter. It's basically a filter like in a spreadsheet, just a little more visual. Once you apply that filter, say you wanted to share with your principal, hey, look at our January stats. You could set this date range to January, then go up to this little triangle and get report link. When you get that link and send that to somebody, they're going to open up your Looker Studio and just see the filter that you've applied. So they don't have to go in and do the date range, manually. They don't have to go in and say, I just want to see January. They can just already see it when you send them the link because it's already done. They can always hit reset up here and then see all of your data. But, when you get into more complicated filters that, kind of combines a bunch of data, you might want to do that. So that's the infographic. That's really all there is. Like you just embed. I'll show you how that. Let me show you how it looks with the image. I think. Let me go to this. So here's that infographic I talked about. I would just delete these numbers out. I'm gonna leave these in here for now, and then I would download this. PNG is fine. All right. And then I'm going to go to my Looker Studio and then image up here on the top, upload. And then there's that image. I would make that obviously fit the dimensions of my Looker Studio project. And then I would put these chart things just on top of it. This is just like Google Slides. You can send this backwards. I think it's a range. Yeah, send to back. And then those numbers would just pop up on top of it. So that's how that would work. I'm going to go to the school I used to be in. My friend Jen Gilbert and Kendra are there still. I'm going to show you a few things that they've done that are kind of cool. So we did a 40 book challenge, and probably not Donald and Miller totally 100% version, but the kids earned some prizes when they hit certain milestones, like when they read 10 books or 30 books. We were keeping track of it with a Google form, which was fine. We weren't, sharing that with the whole school, but it gave us a master list of who was, what kids were reading. All they were doing was entering the title of their book. So they're on their Chromebook, they're already logged in. It's recording their email address and it's getting that timestamp and they're just typing the title of the book, and that was it. So if we go to elementary, here's the 40 book challenge. The kids click this. Here's the form where you fill that in. I know it doesn't look like much right now because I don't go to school there, but if I did and I had books submitted, my name would be right here because it's pulling that from the email address. There's a fancy formula that does that. And then it's automatically getting a total of books that I've read. So I get my own personalized dashboard reading history that's keeping track for me. I've just submitted it to the form. It's automatically kept here. I can see what I can get when I get up to 40. Laser workshop sounds really fun. So that's just one option, because there's an option in Google Looker Studio to filter the results of the dashboard by the person who is logged in. So that's if the student was logged in right now to Chrome, Looker Studio knows that, and then it knows to only show the records that have that email address in the spreadsheet. So another option they have is micro credentials, which is cool. The kids earn these. There's a big giant list of credentials they can get there. They go here to check their status. Same thing. When you submit their evidence that they've earned the micro credential and it's approved by their teachers, it shows up here in this list. And they actually get a little badge and image that they can use in their email, kind of like teachers do too. So, and ooh, this is cool. I haven't seen this before. They have like previous year's report. That's nice. They've also used it as a way to just display the micro credentials that you can get. This is still Looker Studio that we're in right now. It looks like a website, but it's Looker Studio. But this shows some drop-down filters. So you can go to difficulty and just show beginner micro credentials, and it filters those and shows these images. So just another use case that I wanted to show you. So it's got lots of fun stuff in there. Let's go back to this. I'm going to show you where that is if you do want to do it. If you go to resource up here at the top and manage added data sources, and this is our spreadsheet, our Google Sheet that we have connected. If you click on edit, there's this little button right here that says filter by email. And if that is turned on, it kind of automatically looks for an email field in your data. And then that's how it applies that filter so the kids don't see all the books, they just see the books that they've read. That's where that feature is. A way that we've used that at the Department of Education is our district chief information officers kind of fill out this survey of their district and the work that they're doing. It would allow them just to see their work that way. You can also really quickly see lots of data. It really is nothing different than a spreadsheet. It just is easier to interact with than a spreadsheet. And you can see connections in data that you might not have seen otherwise, just, looking at giant lists of columns and rows. So, all right, I think I'm going to pause for a second and see what kind of questions you all have. Let me move this back over here. So. Let's see. Yeah, like retroactive, that's a good question. Yeah, so if you're going to put data in that's like previous, you could manually enter those timestamps and those numbers in if you wanted to. You could, if you get or if you have a spreadsheet of that data, you can put that in manually. And you don't have to use a Google form. This is just my idea of like, how would I make this easy to keep track of collecting the data during the day? Yeah, during the day. So I don't have to go somewhere and find it and record it. It's just on that Google form all the time. But you could totally just use a Google sheet that's already completed. Like I've done that a ton too. Like I have a spreadsheet that kind of shows, the status of school libraries in Kentucky, and all of that data is there. I'm not entering it, live with a Google form. It's just, applied to those, gets all the information from that sheet. So are the timestamps required? No. So like I just said, if I just use a Google Sheet and I'm not keeping track of time, I don't want to filter it by time. I don't have to have a field that's keeping track of that. Let's see. Yes, I think I answered that question. Yeah, let me pull up that information so you can get those links. So we actually presented this at ASL this fall. Jen and I did. So this link right here that you can't see because I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry about that. Right here, this bit.ly/ASL23 Looker, it's all caps. And I'll even grab this and put it in the chat. It has these links. So I have directions here, and I actually made a video of walking through these same directions if you want to share it with somebody else, or you want to come back and do it bit by bit, because I went pretty fast. But I also have each step kind of visually laid out and the things you need to click on. And I don't think I mentioned this yet. When I show folks this for the first time, it's a little intimidating because it's not it's not hard. It's just not as easy as like using Google Docs or Google Slides. There's just a little more clicking. a little more tedious clicking that you're not necessarily used to doing. Like that dragging and dropping thing, that's kind of different. You don't really do that every day. But basically, when you go through these steps, it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of steps. But once you have that done, everything is easy. Like you have your Google form in your pocket, you fill it out, it automatically updates. You don't have to keep going back to Looker Studio every day to, fix stuff. It just kind of works. If you want to go back and edit things, obviously you can. If you do the infographic somewhere else, like in Canva or Adobe Express, you could make your change there, export a new image, and come back and make those changes in Looker Studio. But it's not a big deal. But once you do that upfront work, that's all kind of done, and you don't have to worry too much about it. This is a blog post that I showed you where I have it embedded, so that link is there. This one, I think, is just their support site. I have there's some other use cases here that are from my friend Ben that's there. This is some of that stuff that Jen and Kendra did that I showed you, the 40 book challenge. Here's a gallery of all kinds of different Looker Studio, really education related uses. And then I think this is the template where you can download these templates for these infographics if you want. And you can see the questions that I would have asked to get there. But yeah, I was thinking, like as school librarians, we're obviously a lot of times also ed tech leaders in our schools, and your principal walks by and they're like, I have all this data that I need to share with folks, and I need a way to do that. You can be like, I have a tool for that, and you can help them get that created and use it. All right, I'm going to go back and look at some of these questions. Looker Studio actually is getting the data from the Google Sheet. The form is just our way to create the data in the sheet. So Looker Studio actually has no idea that you have a Google form. All it sees is the Google Sheet. Yeah, so you can use Looker Studio with just, you need a Google Sheet. You need data to feed the Looker Studio. So if you're going to do the Canva thing like I did, where I deleted the numbers out, you're still going to have to update that Google Sheet. Otherwise, there's not really much point in using Looker Studio. You could just, if you're going to make one single infographic and not update the data, you might as well just do that in Canva or Adobe Express. Looker Studio is if you want that data kind of, dynamic and you can filter it, or, I don't love this idea that somebody's covering multiple schools as a librarian, but I know that happens. For example, you could have a drop-down list and just show data for each individual school, and that could be something you do too. But if you're just going to show the data one time, like this isn't the tool you need to worry about. I would just create your infographic in Canva or something like that. Show how to add the image to the graphic. Yeah, I think I showed that when I uploaded the Canva infographic. That's a good question, Nicole. Can you use more than one Google Sheet or form in the same Looker project? You actually can. I'm going to be super honest. I've not done it. I think the limit in the free version is 5 data sources, blended sources. But I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that. That's, like I said, this is totally introduction to Looker Studio, and definitely not, there's way more that you can do with it than what I've shown you here today. Let's see. Let's see, if you add someone as a collaborator to the Google form, no. So I think if they're collaborating on the form, they don't automatically have access to Looker Studio. Like you can, I believe, invite people. And right here where it says viewer, they could be an editor of your Looker Studio. That gets a little dicey. I don't know. I've never had somebody be a co-editor on one of these. I mean, they could. Something that wasn't there when I started this is this little pause button. It kind of reminds me of when you're updating a Google site and you haven't published the edits yet. You could click pause right here. So anybody going to your dashboard would keep seeing the numbers that are there, they wouldn't see any of the work that you're doing on changing it until you hit resume updates. So kind of like, it just really reminds me of that Google site thing. I don't know if it can be embedded anywhere, but you can definitely try. Like here's the embed report, and you get the code there or the embed URL. And there's you can change the pixels there too. I forgot about that. That's kind of cool. If I create an infographic for all our district reports as the main page, I could then add a page and filter the data so each school would have its own infographic as well. That is true. I've thought about this a little bit also. I think some folks want to share this. There's a bit of a misconception. This part is cool. Say I have one giant Google sheet with all of the data, all the things. I can have multiple Looker Studio projects based on that single Google sheet. So I'll say that again because it doesn't make sense probably, but you could have one giant Google sheet. Maybe multiple people are submitting information to it, different departments, whatever. I'm just making this up. But then you could create a Google Looker Studio that is only pulling parts of that data out, and then create multiple Looker Studio dashboards and share those with the correct people. And that would be an option instead of having pages. If you want to limit what they're seeing, or you want to limit, the clutter or their ability to see all the data, you could just send them their own custom Looker Studio. And once you've created one, you could copy it and just make the changes you need to make your second one. For example, I used it we had a summer conference for our Kentucky Association of School Librarians, and we made 2 Looker Studio projects based on the same Google Sheet. One was if you had a laptop and you wanted to see the schedule and be able to filter all the things. And then I made another Looker Studio version that was more phone friendly. So I took out some of the text and I made it vertical, but both of those Looker Studio projects were pulling from the same Google Sheet. Yeah, I think I can pull that up. Let me pull up the form that created this dashboard. I think it's this one. So yeah, this is the form that I created. It's a lot like what I showed you all today. How many students? See, I put the word week in there. I should have just not done that. How many books were checked out? How many classes visited? These are all short answer text where I'm just putting in a number, except for this long one. This last one, I'm putting a little story in. But literally, I think they all, yeah. Oh, it says long answer text, but it could be short answer too. But there's the form. Yeah, you will have to spend some time with it. Like it's not an immediate thing, but once you play a little bit, once you've created your first one, if you're a nerd like myself and data and that kind of stuff, it can get kind of addictive. So I really like, kind of coming up with new ways to, make this useful. And I think to me, the biggest thing is you're creating this thing that you don't have to keep working on, but it keeps providing data and information, which is cool. Let's see. There are some non-Google sources, but I've not really used those. Yeah, you can share all of the things I'm sharing today with whoever you want. Doesn't matter to me. The YouTube video has me kind of walking through these steps. I don't think in the YouTube video I talk about that single cell table. I wish I had added that in there, but I came up with that later on. I would also like some new features in Looker Studio. Like I want a scorecard for text, which is basically what we had to create with that table. But yes, it would be very cool on a library website, and I've seen that in a few places. Yeah, there's Billy. Any other questions anybody has, or does anybody want to, like, I think I have mics turned off, but I could invite you on here if you want to talk and ask a question. And everyone who said thank you, you're welcome. I hope you can find some uses for it. And if you're going to ISTE, come to the workshop and we'll do it like in person. And like I'm gonna have to come up with some new things to put in there. Maybe we'll spend a little more time on the design part of it. The links. Let me put this link in here again. This is a link to the slides, which has links to all the other things. Which conference? ISTE. I will be at ISTE in Denver this summer and doing a workshop on this. Thank you all for being here. And you should get a recording sent to you from this thing today, if that helps you. If you want to share that with anybody, you can do that too. What day or time in Denver? I don't off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's in the. I'm sure you can find it in the program once they if they haven't. I don't know if they published that yet or not. Gives you more to do. It does give you a little more to do if you've not created one. Oh, that's good to know. I know yeah, I've not looked. Oh, is it only for presenters? And speaking of ISTE, if you're going and you would like to present in the librarian playground, that would be awesome. I've got a form for that I don't know if I have it handy enough to share, but look for that in all the social media places. If you're going and you want to present, you want to share something cool, that would be awesome. We'll add yourself to that form. This Teams thing's not too bad. Like I just have no. It's hard to keep track of the chat though. All right, I'll hang out here just in case anybody wants to hang out and have a question. Also, if you get stuck, feel free to email me, contact me, and I've done this for about 10 folks. We've had like a quick 10-minute Google Meet, and we were able to fix the one little tiny thing in their Looker Studio to get it working. So feel free to contact me if you need help. Ooh, nice. Thank you, Ilona. It looks like I'm on Monday at 11 a.m. That's the deep dive creation lab. Main issues that hang people up. I think, well, for me, it was that date thing at the beginning. I spent way too many hours trying to figure that out, like a goofball. But I think if you create the form and you have your questions, I think what gets a little complicated is what happens if you want to change that. Because in Looker Studio, you kind of have to go in and tell it, hey, I updated my fields. I updated the Google Sheet that's connected. Because if you go in and change your sheet all up, Looker Studio is going to be like, this is broken. This doesn't work. I can't find any of the numbers anymore. So you have to go in and kind of manually say, hey, update these fields because I made some changes. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues. Rarely on occasion I've seen it where it just doesn't load very well, but that's kind of like every website. It's not always lightning fast, but it's really fairly noticeable. If I missed your question, maybe type it again. Apologies. Oh, that I should have said that. Sometimes I forget. Patricia, that's a good question. So it usually it's kind of like the delay when you have like a published Google Doc or something like, it's like a 5, 10, 15-minute thing. So you can submit your Google form and do nothing else, and your Looker Studio will update. It just won't be immediate. But let me share my screen again. Let's see. So up here at the top, these 3 little dots, you can hit refresh data, and that'll just like refresh it to this moment, like manually. And there's where you can make a copy of the project. But yeah, otherwise it's just going to kind of refresh on its own time, which is about, sometimes I've seen it like in a minute, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes, but it's pretty quick. Oh, 76 librarians, that is a lot of data. All right, well, I don't see any more questions, so I'm gonna hop off here, but I hope you all have an awesome day. Reach out if you have any questions.